Okay, so it says up at the top, it says Miss Patel is preparing the school marching band for the homecoming show. She has the first row of band members stand in positions along the number line on the floor in the band room. The student's position match the points on the number line as shown. So we see the number line there. So I want you to go ahead and read through so go ahead and pause the video, read through number one, do number one, and then you can go ahead and play the video when you're ready for my response. Okay, number one says, use the number line to write each student's distance from zero. Okay, so their distance from zero. So I'm not just writing what number they are on the line. I'm writing the distance. It says, for example here, Tania is 2 units away from zero. Israel's distance from zero is also 2, even though he's at -2. So if I look at zero here, Tania is 2 spaces away from zero. And also Israel is 2 spaces away from zero. So in this particular instance, I'm not necessarily worried about which direction I'm going from zero, but I'm worried about how many spaces away from zero I am. So Derek is 7 spaces away from zero, even though he's left 7 spaces. Kia is 5 spaces away. Mara is 3 spaces away. Tania, we already figured out, was 2 spaces. Sam is 6 spaces, and then you can fill in the rest from there, okay? All right, and then underneath that it says the absolute value, so that's what we're learning today. The absolute value of a number is the distance from zero to the number on a number line. So absolute value notation, it says absolute value notation. Mara's distance is absolute, so this is read absolute value of -3, and Antoine's distance is absolute value of 3. Since Mara and Antoine are each 3 units away from zero, absolute value of 3 equals 3, and absolute value of 3 equals 3. So the absolute value of a number is always saying, so if I write here the absolute value of -10, that is asking you how many, so every time you see absolute value signs, you think how many spaces away from zero is -10. So -10 would be 10 spaces away from zero. The absolute value of 5. So this is asking how many spaces away from zero is 5. And 5 is obviously 5 spaces away from zero. So that's absolute value. If I think about it in the reverse way, like number 3, this gives me answers, okay? So it says the location of the 2 students who are 5 units away from zero are the solutions to the absolute value equation, absolute value of x equals 5. So let's read this. So this is saying the absolute value of something I don't know has to be 5 spaces away from zero. That's what it means when an absolute value equals 5. So if I have absolute value of x equals 5, I'm asking myself what inside of here, or whatever is inside of here, has to be 5 spaces away from zero. So if this number inside of here has to be 5 spaces away from zero, what numbers could be 5 spaces away from zero? Hopefully your response to that, the 2 numbers that are 5 spaces away from zero would be 5 and -5. So then the actual question that they asked me, which 2 students represent the solutions of this equation? So I'm looking for the students who are standing on 5 and -5 up on my number line, which those students would be 5 is Antoine and -5 would be Kia. Okay? So Antoine and Kia. Okay, those two students are standing 5 units away from zero. So again, just a quick recap of how these things are read. So if I say the absolute value of -7, I'm asking myself how many spaces away from zero is -7? It is 7 spaces away from zero. Alternatively, if I have absolute value of x equals 10, I'm saying whatever is inside of here has to be 10 spaces away from zero. So what 2 numbers are 10 spaces away from zero? X would be 10 and -10. Okay? All right, so let's flip the page and look here. Okay, so we're skipping 4 and 5 there. Let's look at the paragraph that's right above 6. It says the equation absolute value of x equals 4. And remember, this is saying this has to be 4 spaces away from 0, represents the numbers located 4 units away from 0. So the equation, absolute value of x equals 4, can also be written. I'm not too worried about that. So down here it says, so you can write the absolute value equation, absolute value of x minus 1 equals 4 to represent that situation. So basically what this is saying is I don't really care what is inside the absolute value. All I care about is that whatever is inside the absolute value has to be 4 spaces away from 0. So this could be x minus 1, it could be x squared, it could be x plus 5, it could be 3x minus 2. I don't care what is inside that absolute value. All I care about is that this, whatever is inside of here, is this many units away from 0. So x minus 1 has to be 4 units away from 0. Keeping that in mind, I want you to go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try to work through 6, 7, and 8. And then you can go ahead and play the video when you're ready for my responses. Okay, so using this absolute value, it says, what are 2 possible values for x minus 1 given that the absolute value of x minus 1 equals 4? So this is saying this has to be 4 units away from 0. So if this has to be 4 units away from 0, this could be 4 or negative 4. And I'm going to say these are the 2 values for spots from 0. Okay, because again, this is asking, it's telling me this has to be 4 units away from 0, so it could be 4 or negative 4. So now 7, it says use the 2 values you found in item 6 to write 2 equations. So remember, the stuff inside the absolute value, x minus 1, could be 4 because that's 4 units away from 0. Or the stuff inside the absolute value, x minus 1, could be negative 4. Because remember, this has to be 4 units away from 0. So this could be 4 or this could be negative 4. So I set up my 2 equations. And now I solve those 2 equations. So add 1, x could be 5. Add 1, x could be negative 3. So I get x equals 5 and x equals negative 3. So you'll notice every absolute value, or almost all absolute value problems will have 2 answers. Because whatever's inside that absolute value could be 2 different values, the positive or the negative value. Okay, so let's go ahead and flip over to the next page. I'm going to do a couple of these with you, and then I'm going to allow you to do a couple of them. Okay, I'll do A and C together with you. So on A, and this is up at the top of the page, on A, this is saying this has to be 1 space away from 0. So if this has to be 1 space away from 0, I'm saying x minus 5 could be 1 because 1 is 1 space away from 0. Or x minus 5 could be negative 1 because that's also 1 space away from 0. So now I'm solving these 2 equations. Add 5, and I get x equals 6. Add 5, and I get x equals 4. So there are my 2 answers. Okay, let's do C. So whatever's inside the absolute value has to be 11 spaces away from 0. So 2x plus 3 could be 11, or 2x plus 3 could be negative 11. So now I solve those 2. 2x equals 8, and x equals 4. Get 2x equals negative 14 and x equals negative 7. So I get x equals negative 7 and x equals 4. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try B and D on your own, and then you can go ahead and play the video when you're ready for my answers. Okay, so you can go ahead and check your answers here. You can see on B, this has to be 2 spaces away from 0, so x plus 5 equals 2 and x plus 5 equals negative 2. Solve those 2 and you get x equals negative 3 and negative 7. On D, this has to be 8 spaces away from 0, so 3x minus 4 could be 8, or 3x minus 4 could be negative 8. You see my solving steps there, and x could be 4, or x could be negative 4/3. Realize, guys, when you're answering these questions, you have to have both answers. I know I've been saying or, but you have to have both answers. You can't just have one or the other. You have to have both answers. Okay? All right, so one more way just to make it a little harder. Here, example B. Okay, it says solve this equation, and it has an absolute value in it. And you'll notice that there's a number sitting out in front of the absolute value. Okay, if I approach a problem like this that has numbers outside the absolute value, I always have to get the absolute value all by itself first, and I never want to distribute. You can see here they go through the process to get rid of a 6 on top, they divide by 6 on bottom, isolate the absolute value, and then they go through the process of solving. So let's do a couple of those together. So down at the bottom of the page, I'll do A and B with you. Okay. So A, I have a 3 times the absolute value. So opposite operation is going to be divide by 3. So my 3's cancel, and I'm left with absolute value of x minus 1 equals 4. And now I can solve this. So x minus 1 has to be 4 spaces away from 0. So x minus 1 could be 4, and x minus 1 could be negative 4. So add 1, x could be 5, add 1, x could be negative 3. So I isolate the absolute value with opposite operations, and then I can solve just like I did up above. So let's look at B together. So I have this plus 14 that's over with the absolute value. I want to get rid of that with an opposite operation. So 14 plus 14. I get absolute value of x equals 20. And now this x has to be 20 spaces away from 0. So x could be 20, or x could be negative 20. And that's pretty easy because those were already solved for me. Okay, so I want you to take those 2 examples, and now I would like you to pause the video, try C and D on your own, and then you can go ahead and play the video when you're ready for my responses. Okay, so you can see my answers here for C and D. On C, I need to get rid of a plus 5 by subtracting 5 from both sides. I isolate the absolute value, and then this needs to be 3 spaces away from 0. So it could be 3 or negative 3. And then you see my 2 answers of negative 1 and negative 7. On D, I have a couple steps that I have to do to get the absolute value by itself. Get rid of a minus 7 by adding 7 to both sides to get 27 on the right. Then I need to divide by the 3 to get rid of it on both sides, and I get the absolute value of x plus 6 equals 9. So this needs to be 9 spaces away from 0. So I set x plus 6 equal to 9 and x plus 6 equal to negative 9. Solve, and I get 3 and negative 13. Okay.